Welcome, everybody. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company. We're here tonight with Ellen Post Foster, and I also have, of course, my partner up there in the corner, Angelo Ross, who is nursing a little bit of a big toe. There's not a lot of snow, which I am feeling bad for him. I really am. I'm teasing him, but I'm feeling bad that all you folks in PA are hurting. We've got a little bit of snow up here, not great, but how's the toe, Angelo?
The toe is big and black and red, and it'll be yellow tomorrow and painful, and I can't put it in a shoe.
So should we get a hold of one of our sponsors there? Does he need to get you a bigger shell for that 1 foot for the next couple of weeks? You know, like a 28 or something, or from that 23.5?
That might help. That might help because it's not going in a 23.5 today.
Oh my God. Well, Nick will like that. I'm going to have to post something. Maybe that photo you sent to me, your toes, I'll post that on Nick and ask him if he can put that into a boot and not have it hurt. So yeah, we got to thank Nick.
What not to do.
Yeah, so we got to thank Nick up at Nick's Boot Fitting for helping us out with the podcast, and also Blizzard Technica is our sponsor this year and has been helping us a ton. And we just want to let you know, if you missed the Firebird Fireside chat that we had at Pro Jam and Masters Academy with 8 of our national team members that ski on Blizzard Technica, that is up on the national site. So if you go to education and then go to webinars, and then you have to log in with your code, your username and password, you can go down and watch that. That was a live webinar Angelo and I did, and really cool to get to know our national team members, which we have a past national team member here with us tonight, and that is Ellen Post Foster. And thank you very much for coming on, Ellen. We are super excited, and we will admit right on air that very nervous with your accomplishments. We want to make sure that we don't mess things up here. How are you doing?
Good, and thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Cool. So I think I'm more nervous than Angelo. Angelo's just sitting there going, okay, go ahead, Dave, you can do the gig.
You're doing great.
Wait a minute. I'm nervous too.
No, it's been going great. And we always start in the same place, Ellen. We like to go to the beginning. It's probably the most feedback I've received from the listeners is they love to hear how we got started skiing. And I know there's kind of a story to it. And your first memory is from Dutch Hill, I believe, in Vermont. But how did skiing get started early? Was your first memory of Dutch Hill actually the first time you skied, or?
No, I don't really remember learning when I first learned to ski. But I do remember how I started skiing. It all started with my father wanted to encourage my brother, my sister, and I to read and to have a love of books. So he instigated this plan. And for every book that we read, he awarded points. And we could trade in those points to buy something that we wanted. My brother wanted skis. And because he did, my sister and I wanted them too. And I was 5 years old. I'm pretty sure I didn't know what skis were at the time, but I earned my first pair of wooden skis and leather boots by reading 27 books, and the most memorable being The Little Engine That Could.
Oh, that was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. I'll have to look. I wish we had chatted about that earlier. I would have tried to see if I could find that. I imagine it's in my parents' attic. There. Oh
There's
my God, there it is. Oh.
Yeah, it has my name on it. This is the same book I read when I was five years old. Yeah.
That is so cool. Angelo will probably, tease me and say I probably haven't read 27 books in my life, right, Angelo?
I was going to tease you and say you could probably get that on audio recording if you were going to have trouble with it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was one of my favorite. And the steam shovel that got stuck down in the I can't remember the whole story. He got stuck down in the hole there, and then he had to become the furnace for the building. But that was another favorite of mine as a kid. What was yours, Angelo?
The Hobbit.
Oh, those were good. I did read the trilogy. I have to say those are definitely books that I read. Love the movies too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat that whole reading started early. Your dad had you reading, and then all the stuff you did later on is so cool that we'll get to of writing and all of us reading your writings, which is really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You asked about Dutch Hill.
Yeah.
Dutch Hill is actually in New York. And I have at least that's what I remember. And I have some really clear pictures in my mind of my twin sister and I going up the T-bar together. And it was right next to a slope. And when we get up to the top, we didn't have ski poles. We would hold hands and we'd synchronize short swing turns down as we went. And I know we got tangled up sometimes, or we pull off each other's mitten and laugh. And we just had so much fun. And that's probably why I remember it so well.
Oh. So that was really the start of freestyle. It was right there. You and your sister coming down hand in hand and doing all the tricks right there.
No, but I was probably just 7 or 8 at that time. And it was really when I was 10 years old that I had an experience that I think helped direct me toward having a career in skiing. And do you want to hear about that?
Oh, absolutely. Most definitely.
Okay. We lived in England when I was 10 and 11. My father was a professor at the University of Sheffield. And we went on a winter holiday to Meyerhofen, Austria. And we took 10 days of lessons while we were there. We must have had a ski down the first day because after that day, they brought us back into the rental shop, and the ski school director, Frau Erika, said that she wanted us to have their top junior skis, and of course they're still wooden skis. And she said to us that we were going to be champions one day, and it must have left an impression on me because I've remembered it all of these years. And I think it helped me to believe in myself. So last week in preparation for this, I went online and I Googled Frau Erika and Meyerhofen, Austria. And I learned that Erika was Erika Maringer. And she was in the 1948 Olympics. She won a bronze medal in both slalom and the combined. In the World Championships in 1950, she got a silver in the slalom and the downhill. And the next year, 1951, she won all 4 disciplines in her country in Austria, which is wow. That's being versatile. She must have been extraordinary. But what's really cool for us is she went back to Meyerhofen, and she and her husband started the Meyerhofen Ski School. And they created the Riki Ski Kindergarten. So it was the first ever children's ski school in the world. And that's the school that we attended 10 years after they had started that school. So I just thought that was such a cool story. Yeah.
It's absolutely awesome. I mean, that's that period where when I was kind of doing some research and, I knew the big highlights of your career and later in life. And it was that missing era because they talk about going to Jiminy and being part of the junior demonstration team that you were picked there after taking a lesson. But this really set that up with an experience like that from Austria with someone like that. Oh my God.
We came home and we were so excited about skiing. We came back to the US and we skied at Jiminy Peak, and we would practice what our instructor was Hans Peter, and what Hans Peter what he, after skiing with him for 10 days, we practiced all he taught us, and then took a lesson that led from the instructor afterwards brought us in to the ski school to meet the ski school director, Terry Theriault. And Terry was a member of the Eastern demonstration team at that time. And he wanted to start a junior demonstration team. And at that time, there was a program emerging all across the East called Ski Masters. And it was about mastering your skis and mastering the mountain. But it was for young people to become ski instructors. It was a junior ski instructor program that we were a part of. So that's how our career started. And go ahead.
No, I was just curious what some of the things were you did in that junior instructor program.
All right. We competed in final forms of the American ski technique at that time. And it was stem turn, stem Christie, parallel Christie, and short swing. And we had 2 free runs. And the free runs, they judged us on the quality of our turns, the versatility, so changing turn radius, and then also how we applied our skiing to the terrain. And the first event that I was in, one kid did 1 trick. And after a few years, the free run became more of a trick skiing run as freestyle skiing became popular in the United States.
Oh, that's cool.
So I came up through that program. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. And I'm curious because we have in my mind, Angelo, someone who's pretty much up on technique and over the years, and then the freestyle part. Then Angelo loves style. He loves that style. But you talk a lot, and we've talked before, the 3 of us, a little bit about how you look at some of the skills, and you look at the freestylers who are really good, and like today they're really skilled. They're skilled in skiing, and how much of that you were working on in that junior ski program helped you as you moved into your freestyle career?
Everything. I felt like we had such a strong foundation, and we were such competent technical skiers and precise in our skiing that we had a really good sense of edge, being able to turn the skis, deal with pressure. And it wasn't just us at Jiminy Peak. There were kids coming up from all these programs in the East that had such a strong background in just skiing. And then to move from that into freestyle, where you're spinning in circles and doing tip rolls with your legs crossed. And actually, the last competition that I was in, the final forms, so to speak, were parallel Christie, short swing, royal Christie, and Gelundesprung. And so again, like even with the jumping, they wanted it to be a very basic form, foundation for all the aerials that we did. So it was really exciting times for team members to explore all the tricks and improve our skiing. We'd build our own jumps. And I equate it a lot with teaching now, how we want students to not just be told what to do, but to explore and try things. And at that time, we really didn't have coaches that knew more than we did. When I say we, I mean the kids on the team. So we spend a lot of time trying things and teaching each other. And we'd go to an event and we'd see something that another competitor was doing, and then we'd go home and try it, and then we'd modify it. And it was this wonderful time of experimentation and a movement by the kids.
And this is where I know Angelo's, his wheels are spinning up there, because the three of us did talk about this. And I think it's neat because Angelo and I have had a lot of conversations between us just about how it's hard to get people to explore. They want us to tell them the right way to do it. Like, what's the right way to do it to pass my exam, or what's the right way? And we see it a lot on social media. That's not the right wedge turn, or this is not the right parallel turn. This is supposed to be here. And I know I can see him smiling, but he is, that exploration seems to be missed. I mean, how can we get that back?
Yeah.
Are you asking? I hope you're asking.
I think he's
asking either one of you. Either one of you, man. It's
Alan, that one's for you.
Okay. How can we get that back? I think a lot of that is how we set up our expectations in a lesson. If we know where we want to go in the lesson, then we can figure out, we can take some, we can wander a little bit and try things, and we can keep that very student focused. The end goal could change, but we have a common goal, and I think involving the students with their thoughts and what their sensations. As long as we have time to develop that, then we can have experimentation, and we can do it also with just very short lessons, like if it's an hour lesson, moving forward and back and center, which felt better. We can give options kind of thing. But I think whenever we can set up a situation where the student is engaged, then learning will mean more to them.
He's taking a deep breath. I know he's coming.
Well, I agree. I think one of the keys is what you said about you need the time. You have to have time. But I see this in a larger, I see it as a subset of a larger issue. And why do we seek such definitive answers in the first place? And I see it as part of a larger American education system where we've been trained to think in terms of true and false, right and wrong, multiple choice, give me the right answer. And I think 100 years of that has shaped the way our culture thinks about learning. I think it's shaped our expectations as learners. But, and it's important now because we teach skiing, and I can say that public educators teach whatever their content is during a time when you are encouraged to have your students experiment and play with ideas or, play with movements on the hill. And I think it's in the literature. The encouragement is in the literature. The permission is in the literature. But I think our mentality is catching up to that. So I hope it happens soon, because what really struck me the most about what you've said so far, Ellen, was just back to Hans Peter about the impact this guy had on you and your sister just after a short couple of days. It really shows the power and the responsibility of being a teacher. Here come these two little girls back to America, and they're practicing this stuff, So there's just an overwhelming amount of possibility when you're working with somebody to help them learn, to teach them something new or let them learn something new, however you want to look at it. But that really struck me that we have this. How many, you every lesson you teach, you could have a little Ellen Post Foster in there. You gotta be careful with that. Encourage it.
Yeah. You can make a difference.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. There was a Facebook post today. Someone started here in the East because they saw Susie Chase Motzkin out at Hunter teaching kids. And they're like, wow, an examiner does teach kids. It's like, yeah. And then I said, yes, we do. I was out this week with a couple lessons with some young kids, a family on Tuesday, a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and 6-year-old. And then all of a sudden it starts coming in. Luke Martin was teaching kids, someone else did at their hill. It's like, we should be. That's where it's at. Just this kind of experiences.
How can you not teach kids? Like around here, 95% of the lessons we teach are kids. Yeah. Everybody teaches kids.
Yeah. So I want to ask Ellen, because it's obvious that you have a very strong work ethic, and I think with some folks, they don't know how hard you have to work to get good at it. And you worked at all of the skills and then became a great freestyle world class. I think people don't realize the work that goes into it. And can you speak a little bit to, what you did and how you made it fun? Because I know when you talk about it, you smile, it's like it was worth it. It was like the work was worth it. But what was some of your training? What was some of your work day to day when you were young, getting good at it?
Well, I don't think it being, there was never a question of, is this fun or not? To me, it was always fun. Yeah. I always loved sports. It was always going to be about a sport. But I feel like I was driven I wanted to excel. I wanted to do well in what I was doing. And I took pride in learning and doing something better the next run. I think it was instilled in me. I remember my father saying, it doesn't matter what you choose to do, but learn to do it well. And I think I took it literally. I don't think he had skiing in mind at that time, but I was fine with repetition. I actually liked it. I was a figure skater for a couple of years, and then I had to make the choice between skating and skiing. And back then we had patch set sessions. They call figure skating because of the figures that you used to have to do at different levels along with the free skate. And they took the figures out in the patch sessions, but you go around and around the same circles over and over trying to do it better. And I think that discipline taught me a lot because I did get better at it. And it did take a long time to get better at it. And the whole time I loved doing it. So with skiing, I had friends and teammates that I skied with, and I think we loved to ski. We loved to work together, and there was a lot of discipline in it. When we were with our coach, when I was on the junior demo team, then we would practice final forms, for example. I never thought final forms were not fun. I loved doing them. I love the opportunity to be able to do them better. So I think I wanted to reach my personal best standards. And that to me was fun. It wasn't hard work. When I got into freestyle, that was so creative that we would just spend hours and hours working on the trick skiing part of it. The bumps were always really challenging because where I grew up, they mowed them down most of the time. And the first real bump competition I went to was at Waterville Valley. And the first time I really saw big bumps. But there was that element of challenge. And then for aerials, that was a whole development as well. So I was very willing to work as hard as I could. And I think a lot of the time I felt like I wasn't working hard enough. Because it was exhilarating. And I wanted to do really well. Maybe some of Frau Erica's, you're going to be a champion. And the little engine that could, I think I can. They were ingrained in me, instilled in me. But I worked really hard when I was on the freestyle circuit. Not everybody did. A lot of the media hype made it, the international freestyle circuit made it seem like it was all partying. But many of us, we were out there early training. We'd get to an event. We'd want to make sure everything would be geared around when the aerials would be open. And then we'd go to the ballet hill to make sure our routine fit. And then we'd go and ski the bumps. So there was also a lot of discipline. For me, it was always fun.
So I get the question, and we're in a tryout year here in the East. We have the ACE tryout, the dev team tryout, and the big ETS coming up. And they asked me, and I give them my answer, which is mine. But, I think folks would like to know, like, did you get nervous at those events when you're getting ready for them? And they'll say, if you did, how did you deal with the nerves?
Well, I didn't deal with them that well when I was young, quite honestly. And I have a twin sister, and she was amazing in that she often could perform her best when it really counted. And I didn't perform my best many times when it counted. I think that drove me harder in some ways because I felt like I should be able to do this. And I struggled on so as a kid, I struggled some. And then when I did have an event where, when I won the junior championship of exhibition skiing, I think that turned a corner for me. Like, I had more confidence in myself. But I was still placing really high. And then when I competed professionally, I still had hard times. Like Marion would say, I'm her biggest competition outside of when we competed. And then I would fall or not do as well. It wasn't until I tried out for the National Alpine team, the demonstration team, that I felt like I was able to perform with confidence with my skiing. And I have to say that after competing internationally, being at the top of a course and having thousands of people chanting your name or championing EP, which was really hard, or being at the top of an aerial course, knowing you're going to have to go upside down and travel far enough to pass the mark on the landing. By the time I got into the demo team tryouts, it was not so overwhelming. I felt confident that I could perform in that situation. So I don't know that I have answers other than experience.
Yeah.
I suspect that everyone deals with things differently. I think experience really helps. I did a lot of visualization, in real time visualization. I think that helped me. I know it helped the kids that I coached in racing. It's hard to perform the way you want to when it counts, but also knowing how you want to set up for when you start. And that was something I learned on the junior demo team. Before we went, we set our start position, held ourselves with our ski poles, and we practiced this. And then we would take off for our first turn. We also practiced how we finished at the end of our run, which with doing the final forms, and you would take a step up the hill and your run would be complete. But when I teach candidates now for going for certification for their assessment activities, I'll have them stand in position, get yourself out, set up for that straight run, get yourself up for railroad track turns, get in the mindset that you want to be for when you do this. And I think all of that takes practice to get experience, to have more confidence. So
I'm happy.
There you go.
It's nice to hear Ellen say some things. It's like, okay, I do a couple of those things. So that means I'm doing the right thing for the candidates.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many more things.
Yeah. Well, for Angelo, we're going to have to, maybe, I don't know if I can get 1,000 people to chant his name, but maybe I can get 10, then we can start getting them in that mode ready for tryouts. What do you think, Angelo? If I get 10, maybe we'll get some microphones or something to make it loud,
I don't know.
I think I made it scarier, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, no, if all my fans start to chant at once, it is going to be scary for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it puts you feel on the spot for sure.
Yeah. So was it more uncomfortable, or was it at times hopefully kind of exhilarating and kind of cool to have people chanting "Go EP" when you're getting ready?
When I was doing it, it was, I think you're so focused on what you're going to do and where your first turns are and that kind of thing, that and it was another language. It was in Germany. but I don't think it helped.
Maybe we
did well there. No, I did well there.
Yeah. But it does seem like you're saying, though, that if people can put themselves in some tough situations in preparation, maybe that'll help them for when they get into the moment. Where it got easier for you. And then the national team was, which I would think, for some of us, that's the top end. And for you, it was, which is still amazing for the national team. But it's like when you're out there competing on the world stage for skiing, you have a little bit of experience coming in competing, where some have just been doing cert exams and practicing at the home hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, yeah. So where did the love of teaching? I mean, you went through learning how to ski, and you had a lot of sharing, I know, freestyle, and you must have shared a lot. Your sister and you must have really worked together closely as you were young and getting good at freestyle before you went on the tour and on the tour.
Well,
No, go ahead.
Our whole team worked together. It was great team spirit. But the freestyle circuit fell through in the United States, and I skied for K2. At that time, you skied for a company, and K2 didn't send a team over to Europe. My sister skied for Rossignol, and they did send a team. And I was at Winter Park training, hoping that the events would come back together, just waiting to see what would happen. And early the next season, I went to Eldora to get back on snow, and still not sure what I was going to do. And as I go up the lift, there was just one run open, one lift. And as I go up the lift, I had watched this man come down, and he skied with such precision and grace. I watched him, and then when I went in at lunchtime, he came over and introduced himself and asked me if I'd like to ski with him. And it was Chris Ryman from the National Demonstration Team. I skied with him, and he said, go back to Winter Park, get on ski school, and in 2 years, try out for the demo team. By that time, the freestyle circuit was not coming through, but it really rekindled my dream to be on the national demo team. So I went back to Winter Park, got on ski school, and I got my associate. Back then, they only had certification exams at the end of the season. And so in the spring, I got my associate. And then the next year in the spring, I got my full cert. But to try out for the divisional team, to go to the national team tryouts was in January. And Rocky Mountain, they selected how many people could go from your division according to how many members you had in your division. And Rocky Mountain could send 7 people. And I made that group of 7 contingent that I passed my full cert in the spring. So I passed my full cert, and 2 weeks later, I was at the national team tryouts. So
Definitely not our story, Angelo.
Yeah, no pressure on that full cert exam.
Oh, yeah. We haven't even got to how she's all the writing I think she needs to write, her autobiography. This is just cool stuff that a lot of it, it's coming from you, but it's not like you can go out and check it out and read it somewhere. It's neat to hear the different folks and how you've come along. Cause that's the coolest thing with the podcast for me has been the different paths of so many of our folks that have been on the show that are team members and what their path was going to get to the tryouts. Some learned how to ski from, going on a bus group into New York and learned how to ski that way. And some came from families that skied and started skiing before they can remember. It's so neat, the different paths. So you mentioned that it rekindled your passion for the national team. When did that come about, that you knew about the national team and had thought about that earlier?
Between being on the junior demonstration team, then that evolved into a junior freestyle team, and that evolved into competing on the international freestyle circuit. And then it was when I skied with Chris Ryman that I got back into that world.
Yeah. So it started way back near that lesson at Jiminy and getting on the Jiminy team and all. That's kind of cool. So we need to get some junior teams going, Angelo, I think is what we need.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, Alan, do you think Skills Quest is a movement in that direction, or?
Um, I think Skills Quest has some. I've been involved with the evolution of Skills Quest, and worked with USSA for many years. I think that they've got a lot of merit to their program, but I think you can take aspects of that, but you would design it differently for becoming a ski instructor. I think there should be more focus on synchronized skiing. That's my belief. My junior team, we did a lot of synchronized skiing. Back when we worked on Final Forms, we did it. When we put together routines, our kids team opened the event, the international freestyle event at Stowe with the synchronized routine, crossing, doing Royal Christie's crossing, doing outriggers, crossovers, all of these kids. That was so much fun for everyone. And you learned so much from trying to match other people's turns or follow them in their tracks. I don't think we do enough of that anymore. And it's and you, again, if you're the follower, you're in the position where you have to figure out what you need to do so you can stay synchronized, so you can follow in the tracks. So there's a whole lot of exploration that goes in that as well. And it's a great source for conversation also. So I think if you have a kids program, that would be a really fun part of it.
That's cool. So that kind of, to me, a little bit, Angelo might say no, but it really leads to, Angelo loves the style, and it's like, you got to ski like someone else, man. I'd have to ski like Angelo in that synchro if I was following. But it also, you look at that exploration, you're really still looking at the technique and how people are moving. And to me, it's kind of, it blends that, Angelo, that synchro skiing blends that style piece and the technical piece.
And you can have a little different style, but your goal may be that your skis perform in similar ways, but your body may move a little bit differently. Yet it's really fun to learn from each other.
He's got one on the tip of his tongue. I can see it. He's this is when he's processing. He's figuring out how he's going to ask. He's got something in his brain. I know it. I can just see it.
It's a lot of pressure you put on me to ask questions that are reasonable.
I like doing that.
I know. I was just thinking about when I was a new instructor. We did synchro every morning at 9:00. We had a 9:00 lineup. And we'd go up we're at Seven Springs, we'd go up the wooden chairlift on a slope called Stowe. You can see it from the hotel. And they put it in the hotel literature that if you look out the window at 9:00, watch the ski school do synchronized skiing down the hill. And people came and bought lessons because of watching that. It was like free advertisement for the ski school. But as a new instructor, I remember the pressure of having to do it. Like it was hard to match turns of instructors who were better than I was, who were more experienced than I was. And I remember there was this, I'm just recalling this now, this back in the early 90s when it used to snow here. There was a ton of snow, and there was a guy named Joe, ski instructors, maybe 10 years older than I was. And legend has it he waxed his boots. Like he had like when the orange Technicas came out, he used to polish them. It was really attached to them. I pretty much ran him over one day on the top of snow and scratched his boot and got kind of read the riot act because I was this dumb rookie who couldn't do what the rest of the crew was doing. It for better or for worse, it convinced me that I had to learn how to perform, But you're right, Ellen. You don't see a whole lot. We actually do at Seven Springs have a Synchro team. It's spearheaded by one of our staff trainers named Dave Stonebreaker, and they practice, and it's multidiscipline, and they lead the torchlight parade and that kind of thing. But Stoney has really rekindled it, but I didn't see it for a long time, and you don't see it. A matter of fact, I did it at my first ed staff tryout with Chris Erickson. I think Chris told that story on here. It was one of the cards we drew for that tryout, and they gave us a formation, and then you had to coach the rest of the group through the formation, but has kind of gone by the wayside.
So what makes you, if you think back to your 8 years in the team, 2 terms, is there something that really makes you smile? Is it kind of the overall perspective? Is it the working with the other team members? Was it an inner ski? What's like a highlight when you think back that you go, this makes me smile?
Well, I think it was many things. Mike Porter was our coach, and I loved the start of the season. He was really studying ski racing, and I was actually coaching junior racing at that time. And he would come and talk to us about what he was seeing, and then I would leave there, and that would give me inspiration for the clinics I was going to do. But I loved learning from Mike and other team members. And I liked learning and sharing the information I learned. It really make me smile when I'd go somewhere and have a group of examiners or ed staff people or instructors, and just to see their excitement about learning. I actually was in every division but Alaska. I was supposed to go there, but there was a blizzard, so I didn't get to go there back when it was a division. National pride was a big part of it too. Going to Interski was just such an incredible experience for me. Northern Italy, Sesto, Italy, standing at the top of the course with the team all ready to push off, seeing the Italian Alps across, watching the jets fly over with the colors of the tail. What do you call it? Their tails of different colors, the Italian colors, and the music playing, the international flags. It was so just incredible to be part of all that. In the same when we were in Canada, in Banff, Canada, I felt really privileged to be part of Interski. A lot of national pride. Yeah.
So you went from being obviously a great ski instructor, still are, making the national team and influencing things, and then you go, hey, I'm going to not write one book or one article. I'm going to write, I don't know how many, it was articles, magazines, multiple books. And just the story, you said it makes you smile thinking of the people that learned from it. Troy Walsh was telling me the other day, we're chatting, team member now, new team member, Troy, and one of our Eastern buddies. And he was saying that your book, The Art of Carving, got him through dev team here in the East. He said he would have never even made it to dev team without that book. That was the one thing where he was at, to be able to read that book and get the technique and just the technical aspects out of it. He said that carried him all the way to dev team to finally get some good coaching. But that was the major factor. So it's got to be neat to hear those kind of things.
Feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I was coaching. I coached at Winter Park, and I was going for my level 400 coaches certification. And I knew I wouldn't get it because you had to be fluent in a second language. And I wasn't really planning on going to Europe to coach. But I was very intrigued by, you had to do a project. And I was intrigued by that because a lot of, with USSA, I had been asked, US Ski Association, I had been asked if I could help provide information that coaches could use to help their racers become better skiers. Because a lot of the race coaches were former coaches, but they didn't have a formal teaching background. And so I envisioned what a book or a manual would be like that. And they sponsored me in creating that project. I knew I wanted it to be photo filled, and I was able to write about something that I knew. And I had Alan Schumberger, who was a freestyle competitor, who I knew really well from the circuit, was a photographer, and he and I got together, and I wrote the manual, and then we went out and took the photos. And this was back when the computer we used was so small that you could only see half a page on the computer, and you couldn't tell where one page was linking to the next. We developed the photos in a dark room. It was all pretty primitive, but that's how I started. And after, that's how I got going with writing. And I can't remember the timeline, but the team was writing articles, and I was involved with writing some articles as well. But for me, I liked having a picture do a lot of the speaking. And so the opportunity to do photo filled work made it easier for me to write. I don't have a college degree. I didn't have a writing background originally. When I started off writing, I have a childhood friend who was on the Jiminy Peak team, who went on to be a classics professor, and I would send my work to her to be reviewed, Emily Anholt, and she would write grammar lessons, English lessons in the margins for me. And quite honestly, with the Alpine Technical Manual and the Teaching Snowsports Manual, there were some times where I would send her an email saying, how can I say this better? How can I reword this? And she was a level 3 certified instructor. But I got started into it as that project. Then I think one thing led to another. I found that I really enjoyed doing that project. And I felt like I had created a technical manual. I had been in Northern Italy training for my last year on the freestyle circuit before it fell through. And while I was there, the person who ran the camp had a book that was filled with exercises. They were all stick figures for preparing for skiing and other athletics. And I would borrow the book and write down draw all the stick figures. And I decided I wanted to write a book on conditioning. And I had met Stephen Nyman, the World Cup racer. His father, I had him in my National Academy group, and I asked him if his sons could be models for a conditioning book. So I wrote conditioning skills for alpine skiing, and his older son Michael was 12, I think, and Stephen was 11. Again, a photo-filled book that led to writing a race skills book. There was nothing out there for coaching kids. So I had a technical manual, a book on conditioning skills, a book on race skills. And after I did those, then I was inspired to rewrite the Alpine Technical Manual because our technology was so much better. And I was able to enhance it, and I did the technical skills. So I had those 3 books that led to the Alpine Skills Achievement. That led to the Skiing and the Art of Carving book for adults, because I finally did a book for adults. And that came out in the transition between straight skis and shape skis. So,
inspiration. That's Angelo's thing. He loves inspiration. You can just look at the wall behind him.
Yeah. But again, it was a lot of hard work. It was a different kind of hard work. I found that I really like technical writing. I find when people write things now, they often will just write it, but they don't edit it. And I would edit things over and over and over. The lessons I learned from Emily were to continue to edit until you feel you're where you want to be. But that, and then alongside, I would write some articles. And what I had a lot of fun writing was the Alpine Star newsletter for USSA for kids that were members of the organization. And that as I would write something, I would then give it to kids and ask them for feedback. And I think that that's also an important thing to do with when you write an article or write something. Make sure you have some other people read it too, and help you be on track and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So for some of our folks out there, or maybe some level 3s, ed staff, or even anybody in our membership thinking about, they have an idea. Well, is there anything you could say to them to inspire them, or to give them the nudge to say, just write an article, even if it's just for the Snow Pro here in the East, or for 32 degrees? What would you say to them? Because at times, I think a lot of people, if someone doesn't say something or push them, I'm not good at this, I probably shouldn't write it.
I think my best thought was to try what I did, and that's write about something you know. It may lead you to question things, and that's a good thing, because then you can go deeper into a topic. But write about something that you feel confident about, and that way you can get a really good start. If it's a technical topic, again, like what I was successful with was having photos. If you have a photo that inspires you, and you can take an aspect of that photo that can make it easier because you see something right in front of you. But that's a good starting point. And know that when you sit down to write it, that you'll need to revisit it and then revisit it again. Don't really expect to write something final the first time. Or if you can, that's great, but I can't. It takes me a lot of time and effort. It was countless hours working on the Alpine Technical Manual, working on the Teaching Snowsports Manual. It's the work evolves, and it does have, you start and then you see where it takes you.
To me, it's incredible to some of you, and I know Rob Sogard wrote some with you quite a bit on that. And, the guys, Kevin Jordan and Mark Aiken just finished the children's Snowsports manual, which is really cool. Also, I don't think people realize how much work goes into that and how many people are involved editing and reviewing. I mean, that's still kind of even though we have our main authors, most of that is team efforts. Like you reached out to Emily to look at stuff. I mean, how many people were looking at the things you were writing for, like the Snowsports teaching manual?
Well, I think with that manual, a lot of it was the first year was primarily discussion. We created an outline for it. So we had a framework for it. We started to dive deeper, but there was a lot of discussion. For example, we had to work on the teaching learning cycle. We came up with ideas as we were doing it, but initially we got a couple of people like Linda Cowan, who's an educator, to help us with a chapter on learning because of her involvement with education, and also she was a tech team member in the Northwest, so she knows our sport. Back of the book where we have different chapters, we did ask different people to be in charge of different things. Like Eric Lupton was in charge of the terrain learning with the people skills. Actually, I wrote that chapter after it went to 3 people, and it came back and it kept being harder to edit. Then I just took like 3 days and sat there and wrote the people skills chapter. And then I sent it to Robin Barnes and Eric Lipton. And actually I got the some of the information from Eric. And so different people contributed. Rob did so much of the teaching skills section, of taking the teaching learning skills section and going into subtitles and more, identifiers and subtitles, and developing that out. We continued to evolve as we worked on it. But Rob and I worked extremely close on every aspect of it. Sometimes I would write something, sometimes he would write something, and then we edit each other's work. And I consider him my best friend, who I've hardly ever seen, because it was primarily done through phone calls and emails going through that. So we did have a lot of people that helped with different portions of it. But when it came down to it, we touched every word in the manual, and that was a huge responsibility. It also allowed us to manage the information and the flow of information. So, huge project.
Yeah. And for me, I would say, I think you probably enjoyed it because of the exploration. You were like where things started in the discussion and just talking about things and exploring where you were going to go. I mean, that's definitely a piece that you seem to enjoy. And, you know, we've spoken about, you have, that maybe that needs to come in a little bit more, that all of our teachers out there need to look at how they can let their students explore a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were moments that were just, oh my gosh, hard moments in writing the manual because you feel a lot of responsibility and you want it to be right. Anyway, we were able to send that in to Wendy Schrupp without her having to make many changes. And it was really fun to create the shot list and then oversee the photos and write the captions with that whole project. I really enjoyed it. But getting back to Dave, what you just said about allowing our instructors to work with having their students explore things, I think where we're lacking a little bit is how we mentor our instructors. And it may be that there isn't time in schools. I'm not really sure. But at Beaver Creek, I would go out with trainers and sometimes with instructors and just observe them for part of the day. And it was always something that they were willing for me to do. And then we would sit down afterwards and go over their performance. But it wasn't like I told them what they did well, what they didn't do well, that kind of thing. I asked them questions so that they had to think about their performance, and I drew that out of them. So they would learn about what are different ways you could have engaged that student, for example, when you got on that terrain. Different questions. And I feel like we need to be more aggressive with working with our trainers and instructors so that they have a better understanding of what it looks like. I went back the next year with at least 3 of the same people, and I was amazed at how their clinics had changed. That I think maybe takes some leadership and some mentoring. So that's something I think we can help with.
I like that. I think Angelo likes that.
You need support from your resort, and that's got to be one of the starting points. But I fully agree. If the resort values teaching, quality teaching, that you can pave the way for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the better the instructors do, the better experience for the guest, and the more they're going to come back for lessons.
Yeah.
I see this phenomenon. I know, I'm sure you guys see it too, like this, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The people with low skill tend to overestimate their skill set, and people with high skill tend to underestimate their skill set. But there comes a point where the highly skilled people reach autonomy and understand their skill set, but and how it fits in a global picture. But if you look at the Dunning-Kruger diagrams online are really fun. It's like a reverse bell curve. And there comes this moment where the unskilled realize how much there is to learn. And I hear it every year in the locker room. I'm sure you've heard it. Like, I didn't realize how much there was to know about skiing. But if you look at those Dunning-Kruger diagrams, they call that low point. A lot of them call that low point the pit of despair. And I think with appropriately comical like cartoon characters on the diagrams. But I think a lot of instructors live in that pit of despair for all or most of their career. And that's where the habit comes from to seek the silver bullet. The magic answer, but there's not a magic answer. I think if there's one thing we can learn from Ellen, just your story, your experience is world-class and it's vast, but it's all come through, you obviously have talent inherent, but so much effort and work and consistency. And that's really hard for people with like modern lifestyle, and I was just wondering, Ellen, like if you could give a piece of advice to so many instructors are weekend instructors with busy jobs and kids. If they could give them one piece of advice on how to be the best they can be, what do you think that would be?
I would say at the end of the evening, when to take 15 minutes, a half hour, and open the Teaching Snowsports manual and just start working your way through that. Also the beginning, especially the beginning of the skills concept part of the Alpine Technical Manual. But I think the Teaching Snowsports manual is so full of information that they can take to the hill. That because it's really hard, the time is so limited. And if they have a very short period of time starting to read that manual, reading it again. I read it every year. It hasn't been that many years, but I start off reading it. I think that would really helpful. And as you read it, think about it, how it applies to your job, your on the hill situation. It can also be the children's manual. And not as I was involved with aligning that to the Teaching Snowsports manual, but not that involved otherwise. I do think the Teaching Snowsports manual is a really good foundation.
Would you say something also about physical conditioning for the same type of instructor?
For the physical conditioning, I think it really depends on what they typically do, what kind of routines they have, that trying to do something each day. Everything is important. Core is important. Flexibility is important. I would say establish a routine that could be, because you said something brief, maybe a few routines and alternate those. Try to do something each day. And
consistency
would be the word.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's important. Yep.
Yes.
It's kind of neat, Angelo. I pulled up here because when I went through the children's Snowsports teaching manual, it was people asked me, to describe it. We did the podcast with Mark and Kevin about it. I described it, which I thought it was really neat. The quotes from all the different people they asked in here of what a good what makes a great children's instructor. And I thought they were like, the quotes were like mentors. Because if you go through everyone that they asked that question had some little different things, but I think it's neat. I just wanted to read, this is Ellen's quote in here, what makes a great children's instructor. And it was, during my years of coaching, I realized that it was most important for me to listen to the kids and visualize skiing through their eyes. I came to understand that to help them improve, I had to ask meaningful questions, learn from their responses, and pay careful attention to how they interpreted instruction and adapted their skiing. I think that's kind of neat because, that's somewhat pretty much what you said in the podcast tonight, but definitely look at it through their eyes and how they interpret the coaching, how they adapt their skiing. I just thought it was a great, and kind of goes to what you're speaking of with, the mentoring, listening and asking the right questions.
We were lucky. Sorry to interrupt you, Ellen, but we were lucky. We got to talk to Ellen last week, little pre-podcast powwow. And I looked up a quote also because you mentioned this tonight, Ellen, but you talked about it last week when we spoke also about how when you were a young kid on the freestyle team and your coaches really didn't know much more than you did, and you were working as a group of really young kids to innovate and come up with these techniques and practice them, and you pushed each other. And I looked through the lens of skateboarding a lot, and I draw a lot of parallels between freestyle skiing and skateboarding. And even the timing was right on, in the 70s. We talked to Wayne Wong about this when he was on, but there's a terrific quote that Ellen reminded me of last week, and I looked it up and brought it with me tonight. It's by a conceptual artist named Craig Stesick, who's really largely responsible for the aesthetic of skateboarding, and then by extension, the aesthetic of snowboarding, which has heavily influenced the aesthetic of skiing, and we've all seen that evolution. But Stesick was writing about the evolution of skateboarding. It reminded me of how Ellen talked about the evolution of freestyle skiing. And he said in a magazine in 1975, Stesick said, 200 years of American technology has unwittingly created a massive cement playground of unlimited potential. But it was the minds of 11-year-olds that could see that potential. And that to me is what when you talk about freestyle and I think about skateboarding, it's just really the same. It's the same thing that drove it. It was kids.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been cool. I hope that we can have you back at some time, because as we spoke, as Angelo said, we had the pleasure of getting to speak with you earlier in the week ahead of the podcast, which is just awesome for Angelo and I. We got a podcast to ourselves. But I definitely know in my head I have lots more questions and want to ask you specifically about stuff about ski technique and that. But I hope you'll come back at some point. We can have you back on the podcast. It'd be awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And we want to thank our sponsors out there, Nick's Boot Fitting over in Vermont and Blizzard Technica, helping us out to keep the podcast going and have some incredible people come on. And we see Ellen has her black pearls and either HRC or WRC in the back, don't you?
No, it's a junior giant slalom ski.
Oh,
I ski on the junior GS and slalom skis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
my version of that.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Because we want to, this stuff we could talk about there was really some neat stuff you talked about with the boot fitting, because you've been involved in that quite a bit. And then just where you were looking at size, we were looking at your boots and some things you've done. So I know there's cool stuff we could chat about in the future, but thanks so much. And Angelo, anything lastly? I know you always, I don't want to cut you off. But.
No, it was a pleasure, Ellen. Thanks for coming on. And I have 100 more questions, so definitely hope you decide to come back.
I loved it, and just name the day and I'll be back. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Awesome. This is Ellen Post Foster on the Fall Line with KS and Company.